Most people think understanding others is about intelligence, charisma, or saying the right words at the right time. But if you've lived long enough, you already know that isn't true. You can be smart and still misread people. You can be kind and still get manipulated. You can be confident and still lose control in conversations that matter. The real problem isn't that people are complicated. The problem is that most of us were never taught how to see clearly when emotions, ego, and pressure enter the room. There was a time in my life when I believed that if I explained myself better, people would understand me. If I reacted faster, I would stay ahead. If I defended my intentions strongly enough, I would maintain control. What actually happened was the opposite. The more I reacted, the more power I gave away. The more I tried to correct people, the less they listened. It wasn't until I slowed down and started observing instead of reacting that everything changed. I began noticing patterns. I saw how people revealed more through their behavior than their words. I noticed how emotional reactions often exposed hidden motives. I saw how silence made others uncomfortable enough to show their real position. These weren't tricks. They were truths that had always been there, waiting to be noticed. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. This audiobook is not about manipulating people or learning cheap psychological hacks. It's about something far more important: staying in control of yourself. When you understand what drives others, you stop taking things personally. When you recognize emotional patterns, you stop being pulled into unnecessary conflict. When you can read people calmly, you no longer feel the urge to prove, explain, or react. You'll hear stories in this audiobook. Some are my own. Some belong to friends, colleagues, and people I've watched closely over the years. Ordinary situations, workplace conversations, relationships, tense moments where one person lost control and another quietly gained it. These stories aren't here to impress you. They're here to show you what changes when awareness replaces impulse. The goal of this journey is simple: to help you see people as they are, not as your emotions paint them. To help you stay grounded when others are reactive. To help you recognize signals early, so you don't walk blindly into situations that cost you energy, respect, or peace of mind. Control doesn't come from dominance. It comes from clarity. As you listen, don't rush to apply everything at once. Just notice. Notice how people speak. Notice what they avoid. Notice how they act when they feel safe, and how they change when they feel threatened. Most importantly, notice what happens inside you. Because the moment you can observe without reacting, you regain your power. Many people spend their lives reacting on autopilot, repeating the same emotional patterns and wondering why nothing changes. This is your invitation to step out of that loop, to slow the moment down, to see clearly instead of guessing, and to move through life with quiet confidence rather than constant defense. Starting today together. If this message resonates with you, share this video with a friend you know is struggling to understand others, manage their emotions, or stay in control of their life, and who truly needs this to improve their life. Chapter 1. Most people don't see others, they see themselves. Most people move through life believing they are observing others clearly. They think they are reading tone, intention, and character accurately. But in reality, what they are mostly seeing is themselves reflected back. Their past experiences, their insecurities, their expectations, their emotional wounds. All of these quietly color perception. And when perception is distorted, control slips away without anyone noticing. I learned this lesson slowly through repeated mistakes. Early on, I believed that being attentive and intelligent was enough to understand people. I listened carefully. I remembered details. I tried to read between the lines. Yet I still found myself misjudging intentions, reacting emotionally, and feeling blindsided in situations I thought I understood. The common thread wasn't other people, it was my own internal lens. There was a colleague I once worked with who rarely spoke in meetings. When they did, their comments were brief and factual. I assumed indifference. I assumed lack of engagement. Over time, I began holding back around them, subtly distancing myself. The atmosphere grew tense without a single open conflict. Months later, I discovered the truth. They were deeply thoughtful and highly invested, but afraid of being misunderstood. Silence was their shield. Everything I projected onto them had nothing to do with who they actually were. This is how projection works. The mind takes incomplete information and fills the gaps with familiar stories. If you've felt ignored before, you'll see rejection quickly. If you've been criticized, you'll hear attack in neutral words. If you fear losing control, you'll interpret disagreement as threat. These interpretations feel real, they feel convincing, but they are often wrong. Most people never question this process. They react as if their interpretation is fact. And once reaction begins, control is gone. Conversations become emotional exchanges instead of informational ones. Small misunderstandings turn into lasting tension. People defend themselves against threats that were never there. A close friend of mine lived this pattern for years. He took everything personally. A delayed response felt intentional. A short message felt cold. A different opinion felt like disrespect. His emotional energy was constantly drained, not by others, but by his own interpretations. When he finally learned to separate what he observed from what he assumed, his life changed. Not because people treated him differently, but because he stopped narrating their behavior through fear. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Your strongest emotional reactions reveal your internal state, not external reality. This isn't weakness, it's information. If something triggers you deeply, it points to something unresolved within you. When you confuse that signal for truth about someone else, you give away your power. When you recognize it as self-information, you regain it. Reading people begins with self-awareness. If you don't know your triggers, you'll mistake them for insight. If you don't recognize your patterns, you'll see them everywhere else. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates clarity, and clarity restores control. Silence plays a critical role here. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as discipline. The pause before reacting. The decision to observe instead of respond. In that pause, perception sharpens. You start noticing what repeats. You see how people behave under pressure. You notice contradictions between words and actions. These signals were always present. You just couldn't see them through emotional noise. Most conflicts escalate because both sides are projecting simultaneously. One reacts emotionally, the other reacts to that reaction. Very quickly, no one is responding to what's actually happening. They are responding to assumptions layered on top of assumptions. The person who holds control in these moments is not the most expressive or dominant. It's the one who slows the exchange down. This is why emotional control is not suppression. It's awareness in motion. You don't deny what you feel. You observe it. You let it inform you without letting it drive you. This internal separation is what allows you to read others accurately. Without it, every interaction becomes personal, and every disagreement becomes a threat. I've seen this play out repeatedly, in workplaces, in relationships, in families. The person who stays calm gains information. The person who reacts loses it. Calm creates space for truth to surface. Reactivity buries it under emotion. Understanding this shifts how you approach people. You stop rushing to conclusions. You stop labeling behavior prematurely. You stop needing immediate validation. Instead, you watch patterns unfold over time. You let people show you who they are without forcing interpretation. This patience is not passive, it's strategic. As you move forward, don't try to diagnose everyone around you. Start with yourself. Notice when you feel defensive. Notice when your mind fills gaps too quickly. Notice when emotion arrives before evidence. Each moment of awareness strengthens your perception. You're training yourself to see without distortion. People who truly understand others are not obsessed with decoding every signal. They are grounded, present, unhurried. They listen without preparing a response. They observe without rushing to judge. Because they don't project, they don't panic. And because they don't panic, they remain in control. Chapter 2. Behavior never lies. Words often do. Words are the easiest thing for people to control. Behavior is not. This is the first rule you must understand if you want to read anyone accurately. People rehearse what they say. They filter their language. They choose phrases that protect their image. But behavior leaks truth constantly, especially when no one is paying attention. And the more emotional the situation becomes, the harder it is for behavior to stay hidden. I once trusted someone almost entirely based on what they said. They were articulate, reassuring, and always knew the right words. Whenever there was tension, they explained it away calmly. Whenever concerns were raised, they promised alignment. On the surface, everything sounded stable, but beneath the words, their behavior never matched. Deadlines were missed, and commitments shifted, avoidance patterns repeated. I ignored these signs because the language felt convincing. Eventually, the situation collapsed. Not because of what was said, but because of what was done. Most people make this mistake. They listen to words because words feel concrete. They feel polite. They feel intentional. Behavior, on the other hand, requires patience to interpret. It unfolds slowly. It demands observation over time. And because of that, many people choose comfort over clarity. They believe what they hear instead of watching what repeats. Behavior tells you priorities. Where someone invests time, energy, and attention reveals what actually matters to them, not what they claim matters. When someone says they care but consistently disappears, their behavior is speaking clearly. And when someone says they are calm but reacts sharply under pressure, their behavior is revealing the truth. Words can disguise, patterns cannot. I watched a colleague navigate this lesson in a painful way. He was repeatedly reassured by a manager who spoke about teamwork, support, and shared goals. Yet when decisions were made, he was excluded. When challenges arose, responsibility quietly shifted onto him. He felt confused because the words and the actions didn't match. Once he stopped listening to promises and started observing behavior, clarity arrived, and with clarity came control. He adjusted his expectations and protected his position. Here is what most people overlook. Behavior does not need interpretation when you observe it long enough. Patterns speak for themselves. One missed commitment may mean nothing. Repeated avoidance means something. One emotional outburst could be stress. Consistent emotional volatility is a signal. The mistake is reacting to moments instead of tracking patterns. Reading behavior requires restraint. You must resist the urge to explain things away. You must resist filling gaps with hope or fear. Instead, you let evidence accumulate. This is uncomfortable at first because it removes illusion. But illusion is expensive. It costs energy, trust, and self-respect. There is a reason calm observers hold more power. They gather information while others react. They notice who speaks confidently but avoids responsibility. They see who stays consistent when pressure rises. They recognize who changes behavior depending on who is watching. None of this requires confrontation. It requires attention. One of the most revealing moments to observe behavior is during small, low-stakes situations. How someone handles minor inconvenience often reflects how they handle major stress. How they treat people who can't benefit them shows their true values. How they respond when plans change reveals their adaptability or rigidity. These moments are quiet, easy to miss, but they are honest. I had a friend who struggled in relationships because he believed apologies over patterns. Every time boundaries were crossed, there was an explanation. Every time trust was broken, there was remorse. The words were sincere. The behavior never changed. When he finally stopped listening and started watching, the truth became undeniable. And although it was painful, it freed him from confusion. Behavior also reveals comfort levels. People act differently when they feel safe versus when they feel threatened. Watch how someone behaves when they believe there are no consequences. Watch how they act when they feel challenged. These shifts are not accidents. They are windows into character. To read behavior accurately, you must remove urgency. Urgency creates blindness. When you need clarity immediately, you cling to words. When you allow time, behavior unfolds naturally. This patience is not passive. It is strategic. It protects you from deception, including self-deception. As you apply this, don't become suspicious of everyone. This is not about paranoia. It's about alignment. When words and behavior match consistently, trust grows naturally. When they don't, distance becomes wisdom, not punishment. The more you rely on behavior, the less emotional confusion you experience. You stop being surprised by outcomes because you were paying attention all along. You stop feeling betrayed by expectations that were never supported by evidence, and slowly, quietly, you regain control. People reveal who they are every day, not through speeches, but through choices. If you learn to watch without bias, behavior will always tell you the truth. Chapter 3. Emotions reveal motives before words ever do. If behavior tells you what people do, emotions tell you why they do it. Long before someone explains themselves, long before they choose their words carefully, their emotional reactions expose what truly matters to them. This is why emotions are one of the most reliable signals when learning how to read people. Not the emotions they describe, but the ones they struggle to control. Most people are taught to either suppress emotions or express them freely. Very few are taught to observe emotions objectively. As a result, they either get overwhelmed by emotional intensity or dismiss it as irrational. Both reactions miss the point. Emotions are data. They point directly to fear, desire, insecurity, and unmet needs. When you learn to read them without reacting, you gain a powerful advantage. I didn't understand this until I watched myself lose control in situations where I thought I was being logical. I remember a conversation where a simple comment triggered a disproportionate reaction in me. My tone sharpened. My body tensed. My mind rushed to defend. In that moment, I believed the other person had crossed a line. Later, when I replayed the interaction calmly, I saw the truth. The comment wasn't the issue. My reaction was. It had touched an insecurity I hadn't acknowledged yet. That realization changed how I listened to others. I stopped focusing only on what was being said and started noticing emotional spikes. When did someone suddenly become defensive? When did their voice tighten? When did they rush to justify themselves? These moments weren't random. They were signals, but they revealed what the person was protecting. A friend of mine experienced this at work. During meetings, one colleague appeared confident and agreeable. But the moment a specific topic came up, his demeanor shifted. He interrupted more. He spoke faster. He dismissed alternative ideas. At first, it looked like passion, but over time, a pattern emerged. That topic threatened his sense of competence. His emotional reaction wasn't about the discussion. It was about self-preservation. Once my friend recognized this, he stopped engaging emotionally and adjusted his approach. The power dynamic changed immediately. Strong emotional reactions almost always point to one of three things: fear, attachment, or ego. fear of losing control, attachment to an outcome, ego tied to identity. When you see which emotion appears, you can often identify the motive beneath it. Someone who reacts with anger may feel threatened. Someone who reacts with sarcasm may feel inferior. Someone who reacts with excessive positivity may be avoiding discomfort. The mistake most people make is reacting to the emotion instead of observing it. When someone gets emotional, they feel compelled to respond in kind. They argue, they reassure, they defend. In doing so, they surrender control. The person who stays calm while emotions rise gains information while the other loses clarity. This doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means remaining steady. Emotions are contagious, but they don't have to be. When you don't absorb someone else's emotional state, you can see it clearly. You notice what triggers them. You see what they care about. You understand where leverage exists, even if you never use it. I've seen relationships improve dramatically when one person stopped reacting emotionally. In one case, a couple was stuck in constant arguments. Every disagreement escalated because both partners reacted instantly. When one learned to pause and observe instead of defend, the dynamic shifted. The emotional outbursts became less frequent, not because the issues disappeared, but because they were no longer fueled by mirrored reactions. Emotions also reveal priorities. What someone reacts strongly to shows what they value most. Indifference is often more informative than anger. If someone shows no emotion towards something they claim is important, that mismatch is revealing. Conversely, intense emotion around small issues often indicates deeper concerns. To read emotions accurately, you must regulate your own. And if you're emotionally invested in the outcome, you'll miss signals. If you're afraid of conflict, you'll avoid clarity. Emotional neutrality allows perception. This is why self-control is essential. You cannot read others clearly while you are emotionally compromised. There is a subtle difference between empathy and absorption. Empathy allows you to understand what someone feels. Absorption causes you to feel it with them. The first creates insight. The second creates confusion. When you absorb emotions, you lose perspective. When you observe them, you gain it. I once watched a negotiation unfold where one party remained calm while the other grew increasingly emotional. The emotional party spoke more, revealed more, and made concessions without realizing it. The calm party said very little. By the end, the outcome was decided long before any formal agreement. Emotional imbalance always shifts control. This is why people who can manage their internal state appear confident and composed. They are not immune to emotion. They are aware of it. They don't suppress it. They don't let it drive them. This internal discipline allows them to read emotional currents without being swept away. As you practice this, pay attention to emotional timing. When does emotion appear suddenly? When does it fade quickly? When does it persist? These patterns tell you what is truly at stake for the other person. Words may change, explanations may evolve, but emotional responses are consistent when the underlying motive remains the same. The goal is not to judge emotions, but to learn from them. Everyone reacts emotionally, including you. The difference is whether you use those reactions as information or let them dictate your behavior. When you choose the first, you step into control. Understanding emotions gives you insight into people long before they explain themselves. It allows you to navigate conversations calmly, avoid unnecessary conflict, and protect your energy. And most importantly, it helps you remain steady while others reveal what drives them. Chapter 4. People reveal themselves when they feel safe or threatened. There are two moments when people stop managing their image and start revealing who they really are. When they feel completely safe and when they feel threatened. Outside of these states, most behavior is filtered, polite, and controlled. Inside them, the mask slips. If you want to read people clearly, you must pay attention to what changes when comfort or pressure enters the situation. When people feel safe, they relax their defenses. They speak more freely. Their body language softens. They reveal preferences, values, and habits without realizing it. When people feel threatened, the opposite happens. Their defenses rise. Their tone shifts. Their behavior becomes reactive. In both cases, the truth comes out. Not because they intend it to, but because control weakens. And I noticed this pattern years ago while working with a team under a tight deadline. During calm periods, one team member appeared supportive and cooperative. Conversations were smooth, decisions were shared, but as pressure increased and timelines tightened, something changed. They began blaming others subtly. They avoided responsibility. They became rigid and defensive. The environment didn't create a new personality. It revealed one that was already there. Most people make the mistake of judging others only in neutral situations. They decide who someone is based on surface-level interactions. But neutrality hides more than it shows. Real character appears under emotional temperature shifts. Safety reveals values. Threat reveals fears. I once saw a friendship change permanently because of this misunderstanding. Where two people got along well for years, bonded by routine and comfort. Then a conflict arose involving status and recognition. One reacted calmly and sought resolution. The other became hostile and controlling. The behavior shocked everyone, but it shouldn't have. The threat didn't change them. It exposed what they were protecting all along. When people feel safe, they show you how they treat power. They joke about things they care about. They speak casually about their priorities. They let small truths slip. These moments are valuable. They tell you what someone values when they don't feel the need to impress or defend. How they speak when relaxed is often closer to who they truly are than how they speak when performing. Threat, on the other hand, reveals coping strategies. Some people attack, some withdraw, some manipulate, and some over-explain. These responses are not random. They are learned behaviors developed to protect identity, control outcomes, or avoid vulnerability. When you see how someone responds to mild threat, you're seeing their default defense system. A colleague once confided in me after a tense meeting. She said she finally understood a manager she had worked under for years. During calm periods, he was generous and encouraging. Under challenge, he became dismissive and controlling. Once she recognized this pattern, she stopped taking his behavior personally. She adjusted her communication style and protected her boundaries. The situation didn't improve emotionally, but it improved strategically. She regained control. The key is observation without judgment. When people feel threatened, they often behave in ways they later regret. This doesn't mean they are bad people. It means they are human. But it does mean you should pay attention. How someone handles discomfort tells you how they will act when stakes are high. Many people ignore these signals because they want to believe the best. Optimism is not the same as awareness. Awareness doesn't assume the worst, it simply sees what is. When someone consistently becomes defensive under pressure, that is information. When someone remains composed under stress, that is also information. Neither needs interpretation beyond recognition. You can create mild pressure intentionally to observe behavior, without manipulation or confrontation. Disagree politely. Ask a challenging question. Delay a response. Change a routine slightly. Watch what happens. These small shifts often reveal more than long conversations ever could. The goal is not to provoke, but to notice. Safety can be observed the same way. Notice who speaks more openly when no authority is present. Notice who relaxes when control is shared. Notice who treats others kindly when nothing is at stake. These moments show you how someone behaves when they don't feel evaluated. The danger is emotional entanglement. When you become emotionally involved, you stop observing clearly. You excuse behavior you shouldn't. You overreact to behavior that isn't personal. Emotional distance allows accuracy. This doesn't mean coldness. It means clarity. I learned this through failure. I once trusted someone because they were warm and supportive during easy times. When pressure arrived, they disappeared. I felt betrayed. But the signs were always there. I just hadn't watched them under stress. That lesson stayed with me. Comfort is not proof of character. Pressure is. Understanding this changes how you form expectations. You stop assuming consistency where there is none. You stop being surprised by predictable reactions. You adjust your position before conflict escalates. This is not cynicism, it's preparedness. The people who stay in control don't demand explanations in these moments. They don't argue with reactions. They observe them. They let patterns form. Over time, the picture becomes clear without confrontation. This quiet clarity is powerful. As you move forward, always watch transitions, how people change when the room changes, how their tone shifts when power dynamics shift, how their behavior alters when safety or threat appears. These transitions are where truth lives. People reveal themselves not in what they promise, but in how they behave when circumstances change. When you learn to see this, you stop guessing, you stop reacting blindly, and you begin navigating relationships with calm awareness and control. Chapter 5. Control comes from not needing a reaction. Most people believe control comes from persuasion, dominance, or being able to say the right thing at the right time. But in real human interaction, control is far quieter. It comes from one simple place, not needing a reaction from the other person. The moment you need approval, agreement, reassurance, or even opposition, your internal balance shifts. And when your balance shifts, so does your power. Needing a reaction creates urgency. Urgency distorts judgment. It pushes you to speak too quickly, explain too much, and reveal more than necessary. Even when your words are reasonable, the emotional need behind them is felt. People sense it in your tone, your pacing, and your body language. They may not know why, but they feel that something is being asked of them. And instinctively, people resist being pulled. I learned this lesson in a conversation that still stands out years later. I wanted clarity, I wanted understanding, I wanted resolution. So I kept talking, I refined my points, I justified my intentions, I corrected misunderstandings before they were fully expressed. Each sentence felt logical, even responsible, but the more I spoke, the more the other person withdrew. Their answers became shorter, their posture closed. When I finally stopped talking, not out of strategy but out of exhaustion, something unexpected happened. They began to speak. They explained what they had been holding back. Control returned the moment I no longer chased it. Silence is uncomfortable for most people because silence feels like uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like loss of control. But silence is not empty. It is a space, and in that space, people reveal themselves. Anxiety fills it. Justification spills into it. Insecurity tries to manage it. Silence does not force truth, but it allows truth to surface. This does not mean disappearing or becoming passive. It means remaining present without grasping. When you do not need a reaction, you become an observer instead of a performer. You notice how people respond when you are no longer trying to guide their emotions. Their response is information. I've seen this play out repeatedly in professional environments. In meetings, the people who speak the most often feel the least secure. They fill silence with arguments, explanations, and reassurance. Meanwhile, the person who speaks last, calmly and briefly, often shapes the outcome. Their words carry weight because they are not fueled by urgency. They are chosen as not pushed out. Needing a reaction usually comes from three sources: ego, insecurity, or fear of losing control. Ego wants recognition. Insecurity wants reassurance. Fear wants certainty. These are human impulses, not flaws. But when they drive behavior, they make you predictable. Predictability is a weakness in any dynamic involving influence or power. When you release the need for reaction, your presence changes in subtle but unmistakable ways. Your voice slows, your posture settles. Your words become fewer but more deliberate. People feel that shift immediately. They sense that you are not emotionally dependent on the exchange, and that creates pressure on them, not on you. This is why calm people are often described as intimidating, even when they are kind. It is not arrogance, it is self-containment. But they are not extracting emotional energy from the interaction. They are steady within themselves. Others instinctively adjust to that stability. I once observed a negotiation where one side became increasingly emotional as time passed. Their voice rose. Their explanations grew longer. Their urgency became visible. The other side remained calm. They listened more than they spoke. They allowed silence to stretch. Over time, the emotional side revealed priorities, limits, and fears without being asked. By the end, the outcome was already decided. Emotional imbalance always shifts control. The need for reaction also clouds perception. When you care deeply about how someone responds, you read too much into tone. You interpret silence as rejection. You assign meaning where there is none. When you do not need anything from the interaction, clarity returns. You see behavior as it is, not as your emotions color it. This principle applies everywhere. In relationships, the person who does not chase reassurance sets the emotional tone. At work, the person who does not seek approval often earns respect. In conflict, the person who refuses to escalate often determines how far things go. This is not manipulation, it is emotional independence. Emotional independence does not mean indifference. It means choice. You choose when to engage and when to pause. You choose when to speak and when to listen. You are no longer compelled by discomfort to act immediately. To practice this, start noticing moments when you feel the urge to respond right away. Notice how silence makes you uneasy. Instead of filling it, breathe. Let the moment unfold. Observe what the other person does when you do not rush to meet their expectations. Their behavior will tell you far more than their words ever could. Letting go of the need for reaction does not mean silencing yourself. It means speaking from stability instead of urgency, from clarity instead of emotion. Your words may become fewer, but they land harder. Not because they are aggressive, but because they are grounded. The paradox is simple. The more you try to control an interaction, the less control you have. The less you need to control it, the more naturally control returns. When you no longer need a reaction, you stop chasing power. And that is exactly when power settles in your hands. Chapter 6. Patterns matter more than moments. One of the most common mistakes people make when trying to understand others is focusing too much on individual moments. A single conversation, a single reaction, a single emotional outburst. Moments feel vivid, so the mind gives them more weight than they deserve. But moments can lie. Patterns rarely do. If you want real clarity, you must train yourself to look beyond what happens once and start paying attention to what happens repeatedly. Human behavior is patterned by nature. People may change their words, explanations, and justifications, but their underlying patterns stay remarkably consistent. How someone responds to stress, how they handle responsibility, how they treat boundaries. These behaviors repeat over time, often in slightly different forms. When you learn to see patterns instead of isolated incidents, confusion disappears. I didn't understand this early on. I judged people by their best days and worst moments. If someone was kind once, I trusted them completely. If someone reacted badly once, I labeled them difficult. Both judgments were shallow. Over time, those shortcuts cost me clarity. It wasn't until I started watching behavior across situations that things became obvious. I once worked with someone who appeared supportive during calm periods. They were friendly, encouraging, and cooperative. But whenever pressure increased, they subtly avoided responsibility, not dramatically, just enough to deflect accountability. At first, I excused it. Everyone has off days, everyone gets overwhelmed. But the behavior repeated. Different project, same pattern, different explanation, same outcome. That repetition told the truth more clearly than any conversation ever could. Moments are emotional, patterns are factual. People often defend behavior by pointing to isolated examples. That's not who I am. That was just one time. You're taking it out of context. Sometimes that's true. But when similar situations produce similar reactions over and over again, context becomes irrelevant. The pattern is the context. I watched a close friend struggle in relationships because he focused on apologies instead of patterns. Each time trust was broken, there was remorse. Each time boundaries were crossed, there was explanation. He wanted to believe the words because they felt sincere, but the behavior kept repeating. When he finally stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" and started asking, "How often does this happen?" and the answer became unavoidable. That clarity was painful, but it was also freeing. Patterns also reveal emotional maturity. Some people grow calmer under pressure. Others become reactive. Some take responsibility when things go wrong. Others externalize blame. Some listen more when challenged. Others shut down or dominate. These tendencies repeat across environments, work, relationships, friendships. The setting changes, the pattern stays. The danger of focusing on moments is emotional distortion. A dramatic incident can overshadow months of consistency, or a kind gesture can erase repeated disrespect. The mind prefers simplicity, so it grabs onto standout events. But emotional memory is unreliable. Patterns require patience, which is why most people never truly see them. Reading patterns requires restraint. You must resist the urge to conclude quickly. You must let behavior accumulate. This feels uncomfortable at first because it removes illusion. Illusion is comforting. It allows hope without evidence, but illusion is also costly. It keeps you stuck in cycles you don't understand. I learned to track patterns by asking simple questions. Does this behavior repeat under similar conditions? Does it show up with different people? Does it appear when stakes are low and when stakes are high? Over time, answers emerge naturally. You don't need confrontation. You don't need accusation. Observation does the work. Patterns also apply to yourself. How you react when challenged. How you respond to silence. How you behave when you feel misunderstood. These responses repeat too. If you don't recognize your own patterns, you will misinterpret others. Self-awareness sharpens external perception. One of the most revealing patterns is how people handle boundaries. When you set a clear boundary, some people respect it immediately. Some test it subtly. Some ignore it entirely. Their response tells you more than any explanation ever will. A single boundary violation might be accidental. Repeated ones are not. Another powerful pattern is consistency of effort. Who shows up when it's inconvenient? Who disappears when things get difficult? Who follows through without being reminded? Effort reveals priorities, not what people say they value, but what they actually value. Many people stay confused because they keep resetting their expectations after every moment. They treat each incident as new information, disconnected from the past. This prevents learning. Patterns connect the dots. They turn experience into understanding. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or cynical. Patterns can change over time, but only with sustained effort. Words do not change patterns. Apologies do not change patterns. Insight does not change patterns. Only consistent behavior over time does. Until that happens, the pattern remains the most accurate indicator. People who stay in control don't argue with patterns. They accept them. They adjust their expectations accordingly. They stop trying to extract different outcomes from the same behavior. This acceptance is not defeat. It is strategic clarity. I once heard someone say they were always surprised by the way a certain person behaved. That sentence itself revealed the problem. Surprise is a sign you haven't been paying attention. Patterns remove surprise. When you see clearly, outcomes stop shocking you. As you move through your interactions, start asking yourself a different set of questions. Not, what did they say this time? But, what do they always do? Not, how did that feel? But, how often does this happen? These questions shift you from emotion to observation. Moments will always be louder than patterns. They demand attention. They trigger reaction. Patterns whisper, but if you listen long enough, they tell the truth every time. When you learn to read patterns, you stop chasing explanations. You stop hoping behavior will magically change. You stop taking inconsistency personally. You see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in that clarity, you regain control. Understanding people is not about decoding isolated events. It's about recognizing the rhythms of behavior that repeat beneath the surface. Once you see those rhythms, you no longer need to guess. You know where you stand, and that knowledge is power. Chapter 7. The person who stays. Calm holds the power. In every interaction, there is an invisible force shaping the outcome. It is not intelligence. It is not confidence in words. It is emotional temperature. The person who can remain calm when emotions rise gains a decisive advantage. Not because they are superior, but because calm creates clarity, and clarity creates control. Most people believe calmness is passive. They associate it with weakness, avoidance, or lack of engagement. In reality, calm is one of the most active psychological states you can hold. It requires awareness, restraint, and internal discipline, and in moments of tension, it quietly shifts the balance of power. I didn't always understand this. When emotions entered a conversation, I believed responding quickly was necessary. Silence felt like losing ground. The calm felt like surrender. But time after time, reacting only escalated situations. It wasn't until I watched calm people consistently come out ahead that I started paying attention. I once witnessed a heated disagreement between two colleagues. One became visibly emotional. His voice rose. His arguments multiplied. The other remained composed. He listened. He spoke slowly. He didn't match the intensity. As the conversation continued, something subtle happened. The emotional person revealed more than he intended. His priorities, his frustrations, his limits. The calm person revealed almost nothing. By the end, everyone in the room knew who had lost control and who had gained it. Calmness does not silence emotion. It contains it. When you are calm, you still feel. You simply don't let those feelings dictate your behavior. This internal separation is what allows you to observe instead of react. While others are busy defending, explaining, or attacking, you are gathering information. Emotional escalation narrows perception. When someone is emotionally activated, their focus collapses onto immediate threat. They stop seeing nuance. They stop listening fully. Their behavior becomes predictable. The calm observer sees this clearly. They recognize patterns. They notice what triggers escalation. They see where control is slipping. This is why calmness often unsettles people. It breaks expectation. When someone raises their voice, they expect resistance or submission. Calm provides neither. It creates uncertainty. and uncertainty forces self-exposure. People talk more, they justify more, they try to regain balance. In doing so, they reveal themselves. And I experienced this personally during a tense personal conversation. The other person expected defensiveness. Instead, I stayed quiet. I listened. I acknowledged without reacting. The shift was immediate. Their intensity faded. Their tone softened. What could have turned into conflict became a moment of honesty. Calm didn't escalate. It disarmed. The ability to remain calm is not natural for most people. It must be trained. Calm is built through awareness of your internal state, through recognizing triggers before they control you, through slowing down physiological responses. Breath, posture, pace. These are not abstract concepts. They are practical tools. Calm also signals self-sufficiency. When you are calm, you communicate that you are not emotionally dependent on the outcome. You are not desperate to win. You are not afraid to lose. This shifts dynamics immediately. People sense that you are grounded, that you are not easily moved. Respect often follows naturally. This principle applies far beyond conflict. In leadership, the calm leader stabilizes the group. In relationships, the calm partner anchors emotional storms. In negotiation, the calm negotiator controls the pace. Calm does not dominate, it directs. I once worked under pressure with a leader who never raised his voice. No matter how chaotic things became, he spoke evenly. He paused before responding. While others panicked, he assessed. His calm presence slowed the entire team. Mistakes decreased, decisions improved. His authority was never questioned, not because he demanded it, but because he embodied it. Remaining calm does not mean suppressing emotion. Suppression leads to explosion later. Calm means acknowledging emotion without acting on it. You notice anger without speaking from it. You feel anxiety without rushing to escape it. This internal regulation keeps you clear when others become clouded. People often confuse calm with indifference. They assume if you don't react strongly, you don't care. In truth, calm often comes from caring deeply, but choosing discipline over impulse. It is the difference between being controlled and being in control. To cultivate calm, you must slow your internal tempo. When emotions rise, reduce your speed, speak less, move deliberately, breathe deeply. These small actions prevent escalation. They keep your nervous system steady. And when your nervous system is steady, your mind stays sharp. Pay attention to moments when others try to pull you into emotional reaction, provocation, accusation, urgency. These are often attempts, conscious or not, to regain control. Calm is your refusal to play that game. You don't ignore. You don't submit. You observe. The calm person does not need to win arguments. They let truth surface naturally. They understand that emotional dominance is temporary, but emotional stability is lasting. Over time, people learn not to test those who remain steady. As you move through your interactions, I notice who loses composure first. Notice how outcomes shift after that moment. The loss of calm is often the loss of leverage. The preservation of calm is often the preservation of power. Staying calm is not about appearing strong. It is about being grounded enough not to be moved unnecessarily. When you master this, you no longer fear intensity. You don't need to avoid difficult conversations. You know that as long as you remain calm, you remain in control. In the end, the person who stays calm doesn't just read others better. They influence outcomes without force. They guide situations without resistance. And quietly, consistently, they hold the power. Chapter 8. Reading people begins with mastering yourself at the deepest level. Understanding other people has very little to do with them. It begins with you, your awareness, your emotional discipline, your ability to observe without distortion. If you cannot see yourself clearly, you will never see others clearly. Every unexamined fear, insecurity, and emotional attachment becomes a lens that bends reality. And once reality is bent, control quietly disappears. Most people believe self-mastery means confidence, dominance, or strong willpower. In truth, it means familiarity. Knowing your internal landscape so well that nothing inside you feels foreign. Recognizing your emotional patterns before they take over your behavior. Understanding what triggers defensiveness, urgency, or the need for approval. Without this internal clarity, every attempt to read others becomes projection disguised as insight. I learned this when I noticed how inconsistent my interpretations were. On days when I felt grounded, people seemed reasonable and predictable. On days when I felt uncertain, the same people appeared distant, critical, or threatening. Nothing external had changed, only my internal state. That realization was uncomfortable, but freeing. It meant clarity was not something I needed to extract from others. It was something I needed to stabilize within myself. Every emotional reaction you experience is information, not about the other person, but about where your control is vulnerable. If someone's tone irritates you, it points to sensitivity. If someone's silence unsettles you, it reveals attachment. If disagreement feels like rejection, it exposes insecurity. These reactions are not flaws, they are signals. And signals, once understood, lose their power to hijack perception. People who lack self-mastery often believe they are excellent at reading people because they are sensitive or intuitive. In reality, they are often reading their own emotions. Sensitivity without regulation creates distortion. Intuition without awareness becomes assumption. True perception requires emotional steadiness. Without it, intuition turns into imagination. I once watched two people interpret the same situation in completely opposite ways. One became anxious, defensive, and reactive. The other remained calm, curious, and observant. The difference was not intelligence or experience. It was regulation. One person's inner world was stable enough to allow observation. The other's was too reactive to permit clarity. This is why identifying your triggers matters. A trigger is not a weakness, it is a doorway into self-knowledge. It shows you exactly where your reactions override your reasoning. When triggers remain unconscious, they run your behavior quietly. When you bring them into awareness, they lose authority. Each trigger, you understand, removes a blind spot from your perception. Mastering yourself does not mean suppressing emotion. Suppression creates tension and eventual explosion. Self-mastery means creating space between emotion and action, feeling anger without speaking from it, feeling fear without fleeing from it, feeling attachment without grasping. That space is where choice lives, and choice is power. The paradox is simple. The more you try to control other people, the less control you have. The more you control yourself, the less you need to control anyone. People respond differently to someone who is internally anchored. They sense stability. They sense boundaries. They sense that emotional manipulation will not work. Internal stability also sharpens perception. When you are not desperate to be liked, you notice inconsistency. When you are not afraid of conflict, you hear what is actually being said. When you are not chasing validation, you see behavior as information rather than judgment. Emotional independence clears the signal. I have seen people transform their relationships without changing a single outward strategy. They simply became more self-aware. They stopped reacting automatically. They stopped filling silence with explanation. They stopped chasing reassurance. And as they did, others revealed themselves more clearly and more honestly. Self-mastery also protects you from over-analysis. When you trust your internal steadiness, you do not need to decode every word, glance, or pause. You observe patterns calmly. You allow time to reveal truth. You no longer feel pressured to know immediately because urgency no longer controls you. One of the clearest signs of self-mastery is comfort with uncertainty. People who cannot tolerate uncertainty rush to label, assume, and react. People who can tolerate it observe longer. They gather more information. They remain composed while clarity forms naturally. Patience becomes perception. As you apply everything from this audiobook, return to this principle often. When confusion appears, look inward before outward. When emotions spike, pause before interpreting. When you feel the urge to react, slow your pace. Each of these moments is an opportunity to strengthen control from the inside out. Reading people is not about becoming sharper than everyone else. It is about becoming calmer than your impulses. The clearer your inner world becomes, the clearer the outer world appears. And once that clarity settles, control no longer feels forced or strategic. In the end, the most perceptive people are not the most analytical. They are the most regulated. They see accurately because they are not at war with themselves. From that internal order, understanding others becomes effortless, and staying in control becomes natural. As we come to the end of this audiobook, it's important to step back and see the full picture of what you've just explored. Understanding people instantly was never about tricks, manipulation, or clever tactics. It was about clarity, about learning to observe instead of react, about recognizing patterns instead of getting lost in moments, and most importantly, about staying grounded enough within yourself that other people's emotions no longer pull you off balance. Throughout this journey, we talked about projection, behavior, emotions, safety and threat, silence, patterns, calmness, and self-mastery. Each chapter pointed back to the same core truth. You do not lose control because others are complicated. You lose control when you hand your awareness over to emotion, assumption, and urgency. The moment you slow down and see clearly, power returns to you naturally. Reading people is not about becoming suspicious or guarded. It is about becoming calm and perceptive. When you stop reacting automatically, people reveal themselves without effort. Their priorities show through behavior. Their motives surface through emotion. Their character becomes visible through patterns. You no longer need to guess, analyze endlessly, or explain yourself repeatedly. You simply observe, adjust, and move forward with clarity. But insight alone changes nothing without practice. This work only becomes real when you apply it in everyday moments. In conversations where you would normally rush to respond, in situations where silence feels uncomfortable, in moments where emotions rise and your instinct is to defend or explain. These are the exact moments where practice matters most. Pause. Breathe. Observe. Let the situation unfold before you act. Start small. You don't need to read everyone. You don't need to test or confront anyone. Simply notice patterns. Notice how people behave when they feel safe. Notice how they react when they feel threatened. Notice what triggers emotion in them, and just as importantly, what triggers emotion in you. Each moment of awareness strengthens your control. Remember, staying in control does not mean winning arguments or dominating interactions. It means protecting your energy, your clarity, and your peace of mind. It means choosing responses instead of reactions. Over time, this calm awareness reshapes how people respond to you. Respect grows quietly. Conflicts lose their intensity. Confusion fades. If this audiobook resonated with you, it's because somewhere in your life, you felt the cost of misunderstanding, the cost of reacting too quickly, the cost of giving emotional control to situations that didn't deserve it. The skills you've learned here are not about changing others. They are about changing how you show up. And that change affects everything. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening with openness and intention. The fact that you stayed until the end tells me you value clarity, growth, and self-mastery. That alone puts you ahead of most people who never stop reacting long enough to truly see. If you found value in this, take one final step. Share this video with a friend you know is struggling to understand people, manage their emotions, or stay in control of their life. Sometimes, a single message at the right time can change someone's direction completely. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you in the next video. Until then, keep practicing awareness in the quiet moments, not just the difficult ones. Pay attention when nothing dramatic is happening. That is where perception is trained. The more consistent you become with this mindset, the more natural it will feel. Eventually, calm observation becomes your default, not an effort. And when that happens, you will notice that people no longer unsettle you the way they once did. You'll move through conversations with ease, confidence, and restraint, knowing that true control is not something you force, but something you carry with you every single day, in every interaction, without exception or hesitation at all.